It's time to talk sequels. As you know, or rather, as you should know, a sequel season to an anime is both a blessing and a curse. Blessing comes from your reaction to it. Holy crap, a new season of Log Horizon! I love that show! The curse comes from when you finish the show. Why is it over? I only just got into it again, and it's over? Why, cruel world? Why? This holds true with Log Horizon, because Log Horizon Season 1 was a series that I wholly enjoyed. In the almost vast sea of stories trying to cash in on that MMO setting craze, it was one that was entirely coherent and actually spent time developing its MMO world. You know, with actual mechanics and such, things about the world that only an MMO would have. While others have similar premises, they also have settings that could very well just be alternate universes with a fantasy setting, rather than an actual MMO, which actually makes it look very silly when an even better show comes along that goes the alternate universe route, but is much more convincing as a game world. In general, this is depressing, because if you have a unique setting, use it. And Log Horizon did. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that Season 1 of Log Horizon had a perfect ending. It did not. The overall problem introduced in the series is not resolved, that being the characters have not found a way to go home, nor have they fully decided that they don't want to. It ends very much in a way you would expect from a story that is not yet finished, but at the very least left us not on a cliffhanger, but a narrative stopping point that actually just felt good. What added to this is that when the first season ended, it wasn't too long before the second season was announced. But now we have the second season. In fact, I'm actually a bit late to the party as the second season aired in Japan over a year ago. But as I stand here, even a year later, there is no word about a possible Season 3 of Log Horizon. And this is a problem, because this show really needs one. Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, the sequel to the 2013 anime Log Horizon 2. Let's jam. Now, if you've watched my review for Log Horizon Season 1, then quite honestly, not much has changed as far as setting. A bunch of MMO players wake up in a world that to them was the game that they have been playing so passionately for many years. Trapped for an unknown amount of time, these characters must adapt to the world and potentially find a way out. If not to find a way out, then at the very least to live good lives, which can be hard when even this world is filled with assholes. However, instead of just telling you to go and watch my previous review for a more detailed discussion of the setting, which you should probably do, I have brought in my good friend TheHiveLeader to explain the MMO-related parts of the plot, as he specializes in MMOs and MMO-related byproducts.
Thank you, Mr. Arcada. As stated, Log Horizon is in fact one of the few MMO-related anime to actually get the MMO part of the show right. Even though our main characters aren't bound by the limited commands of a mouse and keyboard, the adventurers, as they're called, still have to play by the game's rules and systems. Except when they don't, but more on that later. They have health bars, they have classes, they have levels, and probably the biggest plot point in all of Log Horizon, when they die, they respawn. This simple aspect that we MMO players take for granted has huge ramifications in Log Horizon. Adventurers are essentially immortal demigods, and this creates extreme political tension between the adventurers and the people of the land, or as we know them, NPCs. Season 2 of Log Horizon really concentrates on this, with several of the plot lines exploring the consequences of this reincarnation cycle. With that being said, where most modern-day MMOs are heavily combat-focused, Log Horizon has always been more interested in discussing economy and politics. It is also full of the most mature people I have ever seen. As all of these adventurers sat at a round table and discussed how to solve their financial woes, I kept waiting for at least one of them to say they had slept with someone's mother or to shout out a meme. This must have been an RP server. So where Season 1 was all about our characters trying to survive within the game's systems and limitations, Season 2 does something interesting. It throws a lot of this out the window by showing us what happens when the game begins to break as our adventurers start to push the game of Elder Tale to its limits.
Everyone, let's give a big hand to TheHiveLeader. Yay! But yes, Season 2 is where the world of Elder Tale starts to break down into a more homogenized mess of a world. Where before there were plenty of times that you could clearly see the separation between game mechanics and, let's call them, real-life mechanics, Season 2 starts to show us more of a blend between the two, especially when more powerful MMO staples start to come into play. Specifically, moderator and admin powers. Season 2 is when a lot of questions that in an MMO would be left behind a curtain, like why do monsters drop money and where does that money come from, start to come into play. In an MMO, this is just explained by, well, it's a game. But Log Horizon can't take that route. This is a living, breathing world, and it is quite fascinating to see the writers attempt to bring a more rational reasoning behind many MMO-related gaming concepts that we take for granted. And they also don't cheap out or anything and blame it on some omnipotent god either, which I very much appreciated, as that would have been the easy way out. But ultimately, Log Horizon suffers from the same narrative problems of Season 1. It suffers from a story not yet finished. While previously we had balanced transitions between arcs, enough to give a good sense of progression, a lot of the time here it feels more like padding. It doesn't help that quite a few of the plot lines for this season are, well, filler. From what I gather, Season 2 is attempting to adapt far less of the original novel than Season 1, mostly because that's all they had available to them. So much of it feels like they spread the story out way too thin to cover 25 episodes, adding in as much filler as they could. And then there's the ending. The ending makes Season 2 feel very much like a stopgap. The season continues the story, yes, it continues developing its world and fleshing out its characters, sure, but in the end, everything has yet to come to a head. Worse still, it does not end on any kind of narrative stopping point like Season 1. Instead, it ends almost on a cliffhanger, heavily implying what should happen next, but there may never be a next. As I mentioned, not only are we over a year out from when this season aired with no sequel announcement in sight unlike last time, but chances are we're just not going to get one. The anime ended up catching up to the original novel, and usually when this happens, it depends wholly on the original author to make enough story with enough speed as to still capitalize on the popularity of the series as a whole. However, earlier this year, the author, Mamare Tono, was officially charged with corporate tax evasion, and additionally, the official Japanese Twitter account for the series announced in May that it was signing off for now. While you can look at that and think, that'll just take a little bit of time for them to get it all, sorted out, and then they'll come out with another season when they can. But if you've been paying attention to similar situations with other anime, you'll know that most anime never recover from this. Mostly because anime never generally get beyond 2 seasons, even if they get that to begin with, especially when the second season was produced by a different production house than the first. Speaking of which, so last time Log Horizon was animated by Studio Statelight. This time, however, production was handled by Studio Dean, and the changes are noticeable. The overall quality in the art didn't take a huge hit after the swap, but it still took one. Most of it looks cheaper and less polished in general. We see less of the expansive and immersive fantasy world and much more muddled backgrounds and flat characters layered over top. The animation itself also is done in a way that makes the lack of budget quite noticeable. Gone are the more detailed cuts of action and the great looking fight scenes of the original. Like, I'm not saying that the original had amazing fights though, but they were indeed better than this. Dialogue-heavy scenes take far more precedence than they used to, and even then there's the occasional shot of a character that just doesn't look quite right. Overall, I get the look that they were going for, as it appears that the changes in design make the characters look a little closer to the original material, but I was quite a fan of the aesthetic of the original season, so this all came off as a disappointment for me. The soundtrack is another area where you could tell they tightened the budget, mostly because there isn't one. Or rather, more accurate to say that there isn't much of a unique soundtrack to Season 2. They just continue to use all the music from Season 1, only adding in a few new tracks here and there, but mostly there's a lot of leaning on the first season's OST. Now, on the one hand, the music from Season 1 was actually really good, and I liked it a lot, but on the other hand, it was already spread out to cover the original 25 episodes of Season 1, so at this point, the repetition of the same tracks and themes became grating. However, the surprising upside to this was that they were also cheap when it came to the series' opening song, meaning they just reused Database from season 1. And this may sound like a criticism, but honestly it's a plus because Database is freaking awesome. Oh yeah, and I could talk about the dub this time because it wasn't out when I reviewed season 1. And that's great, except the dub is... Well, it's not bad. It's passable in the way that it does indeed translate the English dialogue, but my major concern would not be with the actors they casted, but rather some of the liberties that they took with the character personalities. Like, if you've already watched the series in sub, then the Japanese voices have particular personalities attached to them. These personalities, in some cases, are either ignored by this dub or instead just really amped up. For example, Natsugu's more jock-like dude bro personality is far more apparent in the dub than in the sub, which I felt detracts a bit. And Nyanta in particular goes from coming off as an old-timey British gentleman to a calm and laid-back black dude. Yeah, they both technically fit the character, but it just causes my mental perceptions of the character to change, and in doing so, it distracts a bit from the show. Then again, now with this change, Nyanta is more of an official cool cat. Yeah, I'll see myself out. Not now, but later. I have a feeling that I'm going to be part of an extreme minority as far as my opinion with this show. I'm a large fan of the first season, and while there were many things in this season that I liked, the presentation of it all, the pacing, the increased padding, makes me wonder what the point of it all was. We had a narrative stopping point, and it is quite obvious that there wasn't enough material here to adapt into another 25-episode series without stretching things thin, so why did they? If they left it alone and did nothing, it would have fared far better than shows that end in the middle of the story. And if they wanted to make just another set of episodes because they could, why not just stop at 12 or 13? Why go all the way? As I said, this series is a bridge season. It's supposed to continue where they left off and take us to a potential third season that hopefully would just end everything off in a nice and pleasant manner, except that we're not likely to get that third season, so ultimately this is just a bridge to nowhere. While I enjoyed and appreciated the chance to see these characters again, to see how they are coping with this world and dealing with new problems, a part of me wonders if we would have been better off not seeing it. It's definitely not the worst season 2 I've ever encountered, but I still feel like my recommendation about it is going to be similar. As such, I would like to present Log Horizon 2 with a recommendation to skip it. I say this as kind of a baseline suggestion if you're trying to decide whether you should watch it or not, as I feel that for most people, Season 1 is enough to do you fine as far as telling you about the story and the characters of Log Horizon. Obviously, if you get really into the series and you need to watch this season, by all means do so, but I don't feel like it's required watching. That said, if in the future a third season does somehow magically materialize, then this rating will probably get upgraded to a stream, unless that season just bombs. Though I'd like to be optimistic and say that it won't. At the time of this video, Log Horizon 2 has been licensed and is available from Sentai Filmworks on DVD and Blu-ray, and it is also, if you have access to it, available for streaming over on Crunchyroll in North America. Link in the description, crunchyroll.com/classreflection for a free trial of its premium service, should you be interested in it. Though, full disclosure, unless you live in Canada, premium is not required to watch Log Horizon. For alternate anime recommendations, if you like stories about people getting sent to fantasy worlds, particularly with gaming-like settings, then I would highly recommend you check out KonoSuba. It's a comedy series that instead of taking a fantasy world and saying it's an MMO without any gaming mechanics, it takes a fantasy world and adds in MMO mechanics without calling any of it out as such. Second recommendation, like with the first season, goes to Spice and Wolf, which is more of a fitting recommendation when I say that you should probably skip its second season as well, because it also does continue nicely from the first, and for big fans of the series it can be highly enjoyable, but unfortunately its second season even more so hints at a third season that should have been forthcoming but never appeared. So I'll tell people to just leave it alone. But the first season includes a nice focus on politics and economy, similar to this season of Log Horizon, so if you enjoy that aspect, you'll get your money's worth? Okay, now I'll actually see myself out. Right after this! Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video, follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, go and check out my Patreon page, and if you feel it within your heart, please consider donating. Very special thanks to Calhoun Boy, Victor, Ekmark, Nikolai Bray, Joshua Garcia, Mark Roby Show, Halo Millennium, Grace Anderson, and Lulika Adachi for donating already. You guys are all especially awesome, and I thank you. And until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.